Chapter 9. It was just after the state patrolman left, late afternoon. I was lying there, feeling better, and feeling better that I felt better. Lying there, reflecting on the hazards involved in living in Amber. Brand and I were both laid up by means of the family's favorite weapon. I wondered who had gotten it worse. Probably he had. It might have reached his kidney, and he was in poor condition to begin with. I'd stumbled across the room and back again twice before Bill's clerk came over with the papers for me to sign. It was necessary that I know my limits. It always is. Since I tended to heal several times faster than those about me in that shadow, I felt that I ought to be able to stand and walk some. To perform in the same fashion as one of these after, say, a day and a half. Maybe 2. I established that I could. It did hurt, and I was dizzy the first time, less dizzy the second. That was something, anyway. So I lay there, feeling better. I had fanned the trumps dozens of times, dealt private solitaires, read ambiguous fortunes among familiar faces, and each time I had restrained myself, suppressing my desire to contact Random, to tell him what had happened, to inquire after new developments. Later, I kept telling myself, each additional hour that they sleep is 2.5 for you here. Each 2.5 for you here is the equivalent of 7 or 8 for some lesser mortal here. Abide, think, regenerate. And so it came to pass, at a little after dinner time, just as the sky was darkening again, I was beaten to the punch. I had already told a well-starched young member of the State Patrol everything that I was going to tell him. I have no idea whether he believed me, but he was polite, and he did not stay long. In fact, it was only moments after he left that things began to happen. Lying there, feeling better, I was waiting for Dr. Bailey to stop by and check whether I was still oriented. Lying there, assessing all the things Bill had told me, trying to fit them together with all the other things I knew or had guessed at. Contact. I had been anticipated. Someone in Amber was an early riser. Corwin! It was Random, agitated. Corwin, get up! Open the door! Brand's come around and he's asking for you! Have you been pounding on that door trying to get me up? That's right. Are you alone? Yes. Good. I am not inside. You have reached me in shadow. I do not understand. Neither do I. But I am hurt. But I will live. I'll give you the story later. Tell me about Brand. He woke up just a while ago. Told Gerard he had to talk to you right away. Gerard rang up a servant, sent him to your room, and when he couldn't rouse you, he came to me. I just sent him back to tell Gerard I'd be bringing you along shortly. I see, I said, stretching slowly and sitting up. Get in someplace where you can't be seen and I'll come through. I'll need a robe or something. I'm missing some clothes. It could probably be best if I went to my rooms then. Okay, go ahead. I'm in it then. And then silence. I moved my legs slowly. I sat on the edge of the bed. I gathered up my trumps and replaced them in their case. I felt it important that I mask my injury back in Amber. Even in normal times, one never advertises one's vulnerability. I took a deep breath and stood, holding on to the bed frame. My practice had paid off. I breathed normally and relaxed my grip. Not bad if I moved slowly. If I did not exert myself beyond the barest essentials required for appearance's sake, I might be able to carry it until my strength really returned. Just then I heard a footfall, and a friendly nurse was framed in the doorway, crisp, symmetrical, differing from a snowflake mainly in that they are all of them alike. Get back in that bed, Mr. Corey. You're not supposed to be up. Madam, I said, it is quite necessary that I be up. I have to go. You could have rung for a pan, she said, entering the room and advancing. I gave my head a weary shake just as Random's presence reached me once more. I wondered how she would report this one, and if she would mention my prismatic afterimage as I trumped out. Another entry, I suppose, for the growing record of folklore I tend to leave behind. Think of it this way, my dear, I told her. Ours has been a purely physical relationship all along. There will be others, many others. Adieu. I bowed and blew her a kiss as I stepped forward into Amber, leaving her to clutch at rainbows as I caught hold of Random's shoulder and staggered. Corwin, what the hell? If blood be the price of admiralty, I've just bought me a naval commission, I said. Give me something to wear. He draped a long, heavy cloak over about my shoulders, and I fumbled to clasp it at my throat. All set, I said. Take me to him. He led me out the door, into the hall, toward the stair. I leaned on him heavily as we went. How bad is it? He asked me. Knife, I said, and laid my hand on the spot. Someone attacked me in my room last night. Who? Well, it couldn't have been you, because I'd just left you, I said, and Gerard was up in the library with Brand. Subtract the three of you from the rest and start guessing. That is the best. Julian, he said. His stock is definitely bearish, I said. Fiona was just running him down for me the other night. And of course, it is no secret that he is not my favorite. Corwin, he's gone. He cut out during the night. The servant who came to get me told me that Julian had departed. What does that look like to you? We reached the stair. I kept one hand on Random and rested there briefly. I don't know, I said. It can sometimes be just as bad to extend the benefit of the doubt too far as not to grant it at all. But it does occur to me that if he thought he had disposed of me, he would look a lot better by staying here and acting surprised to learn of it than by getting the hell out. That does look suspicious. I'm inclined to think he might have departed because he was afraid of what Brand would have to say when he came around. But you lived, Corwin. You got away from whoever attacked you, and you cannot be certain he had done you in. If it were me, I would be worlds away by now. There is that, I acknowledged, and we started on down again. Yes, you might well be right. Let us leave it academic for now. And no one is to know I've been injured. He nodded. As you say, silence beats a chamber pot in amber. How's that? 'Tis guilt, my lord, like a royal flush. Your wit pains both wounded and unwounded parts, Random. Spend some figuring how the assailant entered my room. Your panel? It secures from the inside. I keep it that way now. And the door's lock is a new one. Tricky. All right, I have it. My answer requires that it be a family member, too. Tell me. Someone was willing to psych himself up and tough it through the pattern again for a shot at you. He went below, walked it, projected himself into your room, and attacked you. And that would be perfect, except for one thing. We all left at pretty much the same time. The attack did not occur later on in the evening. It happened immediately on my entering. I do not believe that there was sufficient time for one of us to get down to the chamber, let alone negotiate the pattern. The attacker was already waiting, so if it was one of us, he had gotten in by some other means. Then he picked your lock, tricks and all. Possibly, I said as we reached the landing and continued on. We will rest at that corner so that I can go on into the library unassisted. Sure thing. We did that. I composed myself, drew the cloak completely about me, squared my shoulders, advanced, and knocked on the door. Just a minute, Gerard's voice. Footsteps approaching the door. Who is it? Corwin, I said. Random's with me. I heard him call back. You want Random too? And I heard a soft no in reply. The door opened. Just you, Corwin, Gerard said. I nodded and turned to Random. Later, I told him. He returned my nod and headed back in the direction from which we had come. I entered the library. Open your cloak, Corwin, Gerard ordered. That is not necessary, Brand said, and I looked over and saw that he was propped up by a number of cushions, and showing a yellow-toothed smile. Sorry, I'm not as trusting as Brand, Gerard said, and I will not have my work wasted. Let's have a look. I said that is not necessary, Brand repeated. He's not the one who stabbed me. Gerard turned quickly. How do you know that he isn't? He asked.
Because I know who did, of course. Don't be an ass, Gerard. I wouldn't have asked for him if I had reason to fear him.
You were unconscious when I brought you through. You couldn't know who did it.
Are you certain of that?
Well, why didn't you tell me then?
I have my reasons, and they are valid ones. I want to speak with Corwin alone now.
Gerard lowered his head. You'd better not be delirious, he said. He stepped to the door, opened it again. I'll be within hailing distance, he added, and closed it behind him. I moved nearer. Brand reached up, and I clasped his hand.
Good to see that you made it back, he said.
Vice versa, I said. Then I took Gerard's chair, trying not to collapse into it. How do you feel now? I asked.
Rotten in one sense, but better than I have in years in another. It's all relative.
Most things are.
Not Amber.
I sighed. All right, I wasn't getting technical. What the hell happened? His gaze was most intense. He was studying me, looking for something. What? Knowledge, I'd guess. Or more correctly, ignorance. Negatives being harder to gauge, his mind had to be moving fast. Must have been from the moment he had come around. Knowing him, he was more interested in what I did not know than in what I knew. He wasn't going to give away anything if he could help it. He wanted to know the minimum enlightenment he needed to shed in order to get what he wanted. Not a watt more would he willingly... would he willingly spend. For this was his way, and of course he wanted something. Unless... More strongly in recent years than ever before, I have tried to convince myself that people do change, that the passage of time does not serve merely to accentuate that which is already there, that qualitative changes do sometimes occur in people because of things they have done, seen, thought, and felt. It would provide some small solace in times such as these when everything else seems to be going wrong, not to mention pepping up my mundane philosophy no end. And Brand would probably have been responsible for saving my life. And Brand had probably been responsible for saving my life in my memory, whatever his reasons. Very well. I resolved to give him the doubt's benefit without exposing my back. A small concession here, my move against the simple psychology of humors which generally governs the openings of our games.
Things are never what they seem, Corwin, he began. Your friend today is your enemy tomorrow, and...
Cut it out, I said. Cards on the table time is here. I do appreciate what Brandon Corey did for me, and it was my idea to try the trick we used to locate you and bring you back. He nodded.
I fancy that there are good reasons for a recrudescence of fraternal sentiment after all this time.
I might suppose you had additional reasons for helping me also. He smiled again, raised his right hand, and lowered it.
Then we are either even or in each other's debt, depending on how one looks at these things. As it would seem we now have need of each other, it would do well to regard ourselves in the most flattering light.
You're stalling, Brand. You're trying to psych me. You're also spoiling my day's effort at idealism. You got me out of bed to tell me something. Be my guest.
Same old Corwin, he said, chuckling.
Then he looked away.
Or are you, I wonder? Did it change you, do you think? Living all that while in shadow, not knowing who you really were? Being a part of something else?
Maybe, I said. I don't know. Yes, I guess it did. I know that it shortened my temper when it comes to family politics.
Plain speaking, blunt, plain dealing? You miss some of the fun that way. But then there is a value to such novelty. Keep everyone unbalanced with it. Revert when they least expect it. Yes, it might prove valuable. Refreshing, too. All right. Panic not. Thus end my preliminaries. All pleasantries are now exchanged. Now bear the basics. Bridle the beast on reason, and wrest from murky mystery the pearl of sweetest sense. But one thing first, if you would. Have you anything smokable with you? It has been a number of years, and I'd like some foul weed or other To celebrate my homecoming.
I started to say no, but I was sure there was some cigarettes in the desk, left there by me. I did not really want the exercise, but... Just a minute, I said. I tried to make my movements look casual rather than stiff as I rose and crossed the room. I attempted to make it seem as if I were resting my hand naturally upon the desktop as I rummaged through it, rather than leaning as heavily as I was. I masked my movements with my body and my cloak as much as possible. I located the package and returned as I had come, stopping to light a pear at the hearth. Brand was slow in taking his from me.
"Your hand is rather shaky," he said. "What is the matter?"
"Too much partying last night," I said, returning to my chair.
"I hadn't thought of that. I imagine there would have been, wouldn't there? Of course. Everyone together in one room. Unexpected success in finding me, bringing me back. A desperate move on the part of a very nervous, very guilty person. Half success there. Me injured and mum, but for how long? Then
You said that you knew who did it. Were you kidding?"
No, I was not.
Who then? Who then?
In its place, dear brother, in its place. Sequence and order, time and stress. They are most important in this matter. Allow me to savor the drama of the event in safe retrospect. I see me punctured and all of you gathered round. Ah, what I would not give to witness that tableau. Could you possibly describe for me the expression of each face?
I'm afraid their faces were my least concern at the time. He sighed and blew smoke.
Ah, that is good, he said. Never mind. I can see their faces. I've a vivid imagination, you know. Shock, distress, puzzlement, shading over into suspicion, fear. Then all of you departed, I'm told, and gentle Gerard, my nursemaid, here.
He paused, stared into the smoke, and for a moment the note of mockery was absent.
He's the only decent one among us, you know.
He's high on my list, I said.
He took good care of me. He's always looked out for the rest of us.
He chuckled suddenly.
Frankly, I don't see why he bothers. As I was musing, though, prompted by your recuperating self, you must have adjourned to talk things over. There's another party I'm sad I missed. All those emotions and suspicions and lies bouncing off one another. And no one wanting to be the first to say good night. It must have gotten shrill after a time. Everyone on his own best behavior, with an eye out to blacken the rest. Attempts to intimidate the one guilty person, perhaps a few stones shied at scapegoats. But all in all, nothing much really accomplished. Am I right?
I nodded, appreciative of the way his mind worked, and resigned to letting him tell it his way. You know you're right, I said. He gave me a sharp look at that, then went on.
But everyone finally did go off, to lie awake worrying, or to get together with an accomplice scheme. There were hidden turmoils in the night, and it is flattering to know that my well-being was on everyone's mind. Some, of course, were for it, others against. In the midst of it all, I rallied, nay, flourished, not wishing to disappoint my supporters. Gerard spent a long while bringing me up to date on recent history. When I'd had enough of this, I sent for you.
In case you hadn't noticed, I'm here. So what did you want to tell me?
Patience, brother, patience. Consider all the years you spent in shadow, not even remembering this.
He gestured widely with his cigarette.
Consider all the time you waited, unknowing, until I succeeded in locating you and tried to remedy your plight. Surely a few moments now are not so priceless by contrast.
I was told that you had sought me, I said. I wondered at that, for we had not exactly parted on the best of terms the last time we were together. He nodded.
I cannot deny it, he said, but I always get over such things, eventually.
I snorted.
I've been deciding how much to tell you, and what you would believe, he continued. I doubted you would accept it if I simply come out and said that, save for a few small items, my present motives are almost entirely altruistic. I snorted again. But this is true, he went on, and to lay your suspicions, I add that it is because I have small choice in it. Beginnings are always difficult. Wherever I begin, something preceded it. You were gone for so long. If one must name a single thing, however, then let it be the throne. There, I have said it. We had thought of a way to take it, you see. This was just after your disappearance, and in some ways, I suppose, prompted by it. Dad suspected Eric of having slain you, but there was no evidence. He worked on this feeling, though. A word here and there, every now and then. We worked on this feeling. Sorry. Damn it. We worked on this feeling, though. A word here and there, every now and then. Years passed, with you unreachable by any means, and it seemed more and more likely that you were indeed dead. Dad looked upon Eric with growing disfavor. Then one night, pursuant to a discussion I had begun on a totally neutral matter, most of us present at the table, he had said that no fratricide would ever take the throne, and he was looking at Eric as he had said it. And you know how his eyes could get. Eric grew bright as a sunset, and could not swallow for a long while. But then, Dad took things much further than any of us had anticipated or desired. In fairness to you, I do not know whether he spoke solely to vent his feelings, or whether he actually meant what he had said. But he told us that he had more than half decided upon you as his successor, so that he took whatever misadventure had befallen you quite personally. He would not have spoken of it, but that he was convinced as to your passing. In the months that followed, we reared you a cenotaph to give some solid form to this conclusion. We made certain that no one forgot Dad's feelings toward Eric. All along, after yourself, Eric was the one we felt had to be gotten around to reach the throne. We? Who were the others? Patience, Corwin. Sequence and order. Time and stress. Accent. Emphasis. Listen. He took another cigarette, chain-lit it from the butt, stabbed the air with its burning tip. The next step required that we get Dad out of Amber. This was the most crucial and dangerous part of it, and it was here that we disagreed. I did not like the idea of an alliance with a power I did not fully understand, especially one that gave them some hold on us. Using shadows is one thing. Allowing them to use you is ill-considered, whatever the circumstances. I argued against it, but the majority had it otherwise. He smiled. 2-1. Yes, there were 3 of us. And we went ahead then. The trap was set, and Dad went after the bait. Is he still living? I asked. I do not know, Brand said. Things went wrong afterward, and then I had troubles of my own to concern me. After Dad's departure, though, our next move was to consolidate our position while waiting a respectable period of time for a presumption of death to seem warranted. Ideally, all that we required was the cooperation of one person, either Kane or Julian. It did not matter which. You see, Blaze had already gone off into shadow and was in the process of putting together a large military force. Blaze? He was one of you? Indeed, we intended him for the throne, with sufficient strings on him, of course, so that it would have amounted to a de facto triumvirate. So he went off to assemble troops, as I was saying. We'd hoped for a bloodless takeover, but we had to be ready in the event that words proved insufficient to win our case. If Julian gave us the land route in, or Kane the waves, we could have transported the troops with dispatch and held the day by force of arms, should that have proven necessary. Unfortunately, I chose the wrong man. In my estimate, Kane was Julian's superior in matters of corruption, so, with measured delicacy, I sounded him on the matter. He seemed willing to go along with things at first, but he either reconsidered subsequently, or deceived me quite skillfully from the beginning. Naturally, I prefer to believe that it was the former. Whatever, at some point he came to the conclusion that he stood to benefit more by supporting a rival claimant, to wit, Eric. Now, Eric's hopes had been somewhat dashed by Dad's attitude toward him, but Dad was gone, and our intended move gave Eric the chance to act as defender of the throne. Unfortunately for us, such a position would also put him but a step away from the throne itself. To make matters darker, Julian went along with Cain in pledging the loyalty of his troops to Eric as defender. Thus was the other trio formed. So Eric took a public oath to defend the throne, and the lines were thereby drawn. I was naturally in a somewhat embarrassing position at this time. I bore the brunt of their animosity, as I did not know who my fellows were. Yet they could not imprison or torture me, for I would immediately be trumped out of their hands. And if they were to kill me, they realized that there might well be a reprisal by parties unknown. So it had to stand as a stalemate for a time. They also saw that I could no longer move directly against them. They kept me under heavy surveillance. So a more devious route was charted. Again I disagreed, and again I lost 2-1. Excuse me. We were to employ the same forces we had called to deal with Dad, this time for the purposes of discrediting Eric. If the job of defending Amber, so confidently assumed, were to prove too much for him, and Blaze then came onto the scene and handled the situation with dispatch, why, Blaze would even have popular support as he moved on to assume the role of defender himself, and after quite a period of time, suffered the thrusting of sovereignty upon him for the good of Amber. Question, I interrupted. What about Benedict? I know he was off being discontent in his Avalon, but if something really threatened Amber... Sorry, I'm going to take a sip of Coke. Yes, he said, nodding. And for that reason, a part of our deal was to involve Benedict with a number of problems of his own. I thought of the harassment of Benedict's Avalon by the Hellmaids. I thought of the stump of his right arm. I opened my mouth to speak again, but Brand raised his hand. Let me finish in my fashion, Corwin. I'm not unmindful of your thought processes as you speak. I feel the pain in your side, twin to my own. Yes, I know these things and many more. His eyes burned strangely as he took another cigarette into his hand and lit it of its own accord. He drew heavily upon it and spoke as he exhaled. I broke with the others over this decision. I saw it as involving too great a peril, as placing Amber herself into jeopardy. Broke with them. He watched the smoke for several moments before he continued. But things were too far advanced that I might simply walk away. I had to oppose them in order to defend myself as well as Amber. It was too late to swing over to Eric's side, and he would not have protected me if he could have. And besides, I was certain he was going to lose. It was then that I decided to employ certain new abilities I had acquired. I had often wondered at the strange relationship between Eric and Flora, off on that shadow earth she pretended so to enjoy. I had had a slight suspicion that there was something about that place which concerned him, that she might be his agent there. Well, I could not get close enough to him to achieve any satisfaction on this count. I felt confident that I would not take too much in the way of investigation, direct or otherwise, to learn what Flora was about, and so I did. Then suddenly the pace accelerated. My own party was concerned as to my whereabouts. Then when I picked you up and shocked back a few memories, Eric learned from Flora that something was suddenly quite amiss. Consequently, both sides were soon looking for me. I decided that your return would throw everyone's plans out the window and get me out of the pocket I was in long enough to come up with an alternative to the way things were going. Eric's claim would be clouded once again. You would have had supporters of your own. My party would have lost the purpose for its entire maneuver, and I had assumed you would not be ungrateful to me for my part in things. Then you went and escaped from Porter, and things got really complicated. All of us were looking for you, as I later learned, for different reasons, but my former associates had something extra going for them. They learned what was happening, located you, and got there first. Obviously, there was a very simple way to preserve the status quo, where they would continue to hold the edge. Blaze fired the shots that put you in your car in the lake. I arrived just as this was occurring. He departed almost immediately, for it looked as if he had done a thorough job. I dragged you out, though, and there was enough left to start treating. It was frustrating now that I look back on it, not knowing whether the treatment had really been effective, whether you would awaken as Corwin or Corey. It was frustrating afterward also, still not knowing. I hell-rode out when help arrived. My associates caught up with me somewhat later and put me where you found me. Do you know the rest of the story? Not all of it. Then stop me whenever you've caught up on this. I only obtained it later myself. Eric's crowd learned of the accident, got your location, and had you transferred to a private place, where you could be better protected, and kept you heavily sedated so that they could be protected. Why should Eric protect me, especially if my presence was going to wreck his plans? By then, 7 of us knew you were still living, and that was too many. It was simply too late to do what he would have liked to do. He was still trying to live down Dad's words. If anything had happened to you once you were in his power, it would have blocked his movement to the throne. If Benedict ever got word of it, or Gerard, no, he'd not have made it. Afterward, yes. Before, no. What happened was that general knowledge of the fact of your existence forced his hand. He scheduled his coronation and resolved to keep you out of the way until it had occurred. An extremely premature bit of business. Not that I see he had much of a choice. I guess you know what happened after that, since it happened to you. I fell in with Blaze just as he was making his move. Not too fortunate. He shrugged. Oh, it might have been if you had won. If you'd been able to do something about Blaze. You hadn't a chance, though, not really. My grasp of their motivations begins to dissolve at this point, but I believe that the entire assault really constituted some sort of feint. Why? As I said, I do not know, but they already had Eric just about where they wanted him. It should not have been necessary to call that attack. I shook my head. Too much, too fast. Many of the facts sounded true once I subtracted the narrator's bias. But still. I don't know, I began. Of course, he said, but if you ask me, I will tell you. Who was the third member of your group? The same person who stabbed me, of course. Would you care to venture a guess? Just tell me. Fiona. The whole thing was her idea. And why didn't you tell me that right away? Because you would not have sat still long enough to hear the rest of what I had to say. You would have dashed off to put her under restraint, discovered that she was gone, roused all the others, started an investigation, and wasted a lot of valuable time. You still may, but it at least provided me with your attention for a sufficient time for me to convince you that I know what I'm about. Now, when I tell you that time is essential, and that you must hear the rest of what I have to say as soon as possible, if Amber is to have any chance at all, you might listen rather than chase a crazy lady. I had already half risen from my chair. I shouldn't go after her, I said. To hell with her, for now. You've got bigger problems. You'd better sit down again.
So I did. Ugh. I'm gonna call it there, I think. My throat is totally wrecked. It's been so long since I've read that I need to build up the resistance again. I feel like I say that every time. I should be building up resistance pretty good this next few days because I'm starting the daily now. For the next week-ish, at least until Saturday. Saturday probably be the last day that I can swing this. I'm going to try to... Oh, fuck. You know, I totally forgot to put the image up the whole time. I'm such an idiot. Ah! God damn it. I'm not going to re-record that. My throat's fucked right now. I should have gone down and got some honey lemon water or tea before I started reading. But I wasn't thinking about that. Rest assured, next time I will try that trick that you all have been telling me about. I'm going to leave it at one chapter just because, you know, get the throat used to reading again. But I'm also... Let's see. I think I might do 2 chapters tomorrow. One chapter is pretty short, and then it's the end of the book. So I might as well do 2 chapters tomorrow. Let's see, how long is that? Page 348 to 367. So about 20 pages. Not quite, but, you know, pretty close. That's not bad. Yeah, I think I'll do that. And then we'll start on the Hand of Oberon on, let's see, today is Tuesday? Yeah, today's Tuesday. So Wednesday we'll get the 2 chapters read, and then Thursday we'll start Hand of Oberon. Friday we'll continue Hand of Oberon. Saturday continue. Then Sunday is Father's Day, so I'll be busy. And then I'm going on a camping trip with some friends. So I'll be gone Monday, Tuesday. I should be back Wednesday. I don't know if I'll record, but I'll try. At the latest, expect Thursday, and then I'll try to continue dailies for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of that week. And then we'll go back to the weekly schedule. This is my plans, anyways. I feel bad because I've been meaning to start the week of dailies for basically a whole week. But my sister was on her honeymoon last week, and then we've been busy with the business with Father's Day orders coming in. So, you know, I was busy at work, and I'm still busy, but after this weekend, that should be over. But, you know, it is Father's Day, and then I have camping trip plans, so you'll miss a few days there, but I will finish out. I will do the rest of this week until Sunday. I'll not do Sunday, and then I'll resume at the latest Thursday through Sunday. So you should get, you know, quite a few videos. That's like 10 days of like pretty clustered, tight Amber content. And then it'll go back to weekly. I still kind of plan on doing that other series I was talking about. I recorded one already for that series for Dishonored, Weird Places and Dishonored. But whenever I was recording it, I just realized that basically I like the game too much, and so I'll just make a whole ass playthrough video series of it because it's just really good. I'm a big sucker for like Victorian sort of aesthetic. And the world has really interesting lore that I like to learn about and tell people about. So it's hard to just cut to the strict places where it's hard to pick a favorites, So I'll probably just play through the whole last game and then do the same with Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider. I might push it off for a while because it is kind of hard to... I've played the games so many times that, I kind of got to be in the mood to play it again at this point, which I'm kind of like on the fence on right now. I'm on the cusp of being in the mood to do it. So, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But if you want a change of pace and content, then look forward to that. I've also been considering making a video about this game called Dread Delusion, which is an interesting little small studio. It might even just be a couple of guys, I think, or maybe one guy that made the game. But Dread Delusion is an interesting looking game. I've put like 10 hours into it. So it wouldn't be like a new playthrough. It'd just be sort of like a showcase sort of thing. And me just talking about like the stuff I like about it and don't like about it. If I even do a video on it. I might just continue to enjoy it myself. I'm not exactly sure yet. But that's the plan there. God, my throat fucking hurts. Anyway, I don't think I have any more news to share, so I'm just gonna cut it off there, and we'll pick back up with Chapter 10 tomorrow. And that tomorrow is actually tomorrow, so look forward to it.